towards Frederick's forehead and pull the trigger.
Oh my gosh. So.
But the gun misfired.
Wow.
It misfired. So he fucking pistol whipped Stewart unconscious, and Bell is screaming murder, murder. I don't know. This is why you would scream. It's the 1860s, I guess. But he's screaming it outside. So Stewart shoves Fanny out of the way to get into Stewart's bed, and he starts stabbing at Stewart's face with a long knife, which sliced open his cheek, Stewart's cheek. But however, the split neck bracelet he was wearing protected him, so it didn't hit his neck.
Lucky break.
Yeah, so his pals like stabbing and stabbing. He cut his cheek really bad, but the fucking it didn't penetrate past his neck brace. So Stewart's other son, Augustus, and Sergeant George F. Robinson, a soldier that was assigned to watch Stewart, were alerted to Fanny's screams and received stab wounds and struggling with Powell. As Augustus went for a pistol, Powell ran downstairs towards the door where he encountered the State Department messenger. Powell stabbed the State Department messenger in the back, then ran outside exclaiming, "I'm mad, I'm mad. Jesus Christ, I'm fucking mad." And ran out into the streets and disappeared. And also during that same time, George Astaroth goes to the Kirkwood house where the Vice President Andrew Johnson is staying. And I'm going to sum up this story. He gets drunk and is like, fuck it.
So he just like bails on this entire.
He just bailed. Yeah,
the Vice President of the United States.
Because he's scared to death. He doesn't want to fucking do this. He's part of the original conspiracy kidnapping, and he's like, oh, he's at first all gun ho, like, yeah, let's kill the motherfucker. Then he starts thinking about it. It's just like, I never killed anyone before. Let me just drink this and get some liquid courage, and all of a sudden he's just fucking flat out drunk, and he's just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go take a shit and pass out. Like how we get when we get drunk.
So I want to understand, like, is this all happening around the same time, or
almost at the same exact time? But yeah,
so
all these are happening at the same time, around the same time.
So it's possible that the other two assassins don't even know if Lincoln's dead at this moment, right?
No one knows. Booth doesn't even know he's dead. Even though he has a good idea.
Sure.
No one knows anything.
Sure.
So all this is happening. You just figured, like, okay, everything's gone the way it's supposed to go. So, yeah.
So, like, I wonder if that led to this guy chickening out because, like, had he known that Lincoln had passed away, or had he known that Wilkes successfully carried out the assassination, he might have been a bit more
I don't think
enticed to carry out the plan.
I don't think so.
You know what I mean? Like, no honor among thieves type of thing. I wonder if he thought, like, hey, if I commit this crime to try to assassinate the vice president, but Wilkes Booth hasn't gone through with it, I'm going to be the only person committing a crime today. So I wonder if that sort of went into his psyche too, or if he just got drunk and chickened out.
Yeah, he got drunk and chickened out.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, he got drunk and chickened out. Yeah, so we got some everything pretty much up, and it's still a lot, but yeah. So Booth ends up getting out of Washington D.C. before they shut down the entire thing, the entire city. He ends up getting out of there and heads to Stewart's Tavern in Stewartsville, Maryland. So he ends up getting there. He picks up some weapons and some supplies. And around that time, he realizes his leg is really broken. So he ends up setting out a little further because he's like, look, we got to get out of Maryland. We got to get into Virginia, where they still think it's Confederate country, which is not. It's Union's fucking everywhere. The war's damn near over. Like, there's some parts, of the South that they're not in, but they still feel that Virginia, like there's still sympathizers there. They can still help us. So they end up traveling and getting to the home of well, first Booth meets up with David Heron. They meet up, they grab the weapons from Stewart's Tavern, and they end up making their way to the home of a Samuel L. Mudd, a local doctor who splits the leg, pretty much puts it like almost in a cast.
Right.
Yeah. And made him a pair of crutches, excuse me. And they spent about a day there, Booth and Heron. Booth and Heron then hired a local man to guide them to Samuel Cox's house, which is in Rich Hill, Maryland. Samuel Cox was a colonel in the Confederate Army and a sympathizer. So they make it down to his house, and Cox in turns takes them to Thomas Jones, another Confederate sympathizer, who hides Booth and Heron in the Zekiah Swamp for 5 days until they could cross the Potomac. So if you have your map up, Virginia and Maryland and Washington, well, Virginia is separated from Maryland and Washington, D.C. by the Potomac River.
Sure.
Now there's a bunch of bridges and stuff like that. You just cross over. It's nothing. It's like crossing over Virginia is nothing. Mm-hmm. Even though I've been to Virginia, I've never been to Maryland or Washington, D.C. But yeah, crossing over the Potomac is nothing now. Back then, it was a fucking journey.
I see that. Yeah. I mean, even on the map, the Potomac doesn't, it's not that small. So I imagine it was a journey to get across.
Yeah, they had to, get across grid to that. And especially now they have a description of Booth, and everyone's looking for that guy because he done a horrible thing.
So
they gotta kill him.
Idea is that he's going to cross over to Virginia, where he thinks he will be sheltered because he thinks Virginia is still a part of the Confederacy.
Yeah, and also, even though it's not, it's being occupied by the Union Army, but there's at least people who are still sympathetic to the cause, and still for the cause of owning people.
Sure.
And they can hide him and get him even further south, and not only that, to give them time to regroup their troops and make another assault on the Union Army.
Sure.
So that's his whole point of getting to Virginia.
Okay, so he gets to 5 days later.
Yeah, on the afternoon of April 24th, they arrive at the farm of Richard H. Garrett, a tobacco farmer in King County, Virginia. Booth told Garrett he was a wounded Confederate soldier. But at that same time, the hunt for the conspirators was one of the largest in U.S. history. It involved thousands of federal troops and civilians. You know what the reward for capturing Booth was?
How much?
$50,000 back then. You know what's equivalent to now?
No.
$800,000.
I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money back then. $50,000.
Mm-hmm. And also, they had gotten John Heron, David Heron, who was his reward was $25,000, and a guy named John Stewart. John Stewart was involved. I didn't mention John Stewart at the time. Back earlier, but John Stewart was Mary. He was John was Booth's friend. He was a part of the original conspiracy to kidnap Lincoln. He was semi a part of this conspiracy to murder Lincoln. He had an idea what Booth was going to do. What I'm trying to say, and his mother is Mary Surratt.
Okay, I see.
So John, no, I'm saying his name right. It's John Surratt. I'm sorry.
Surratt, yeah, John Surratt. That's right.
Surratt, yeah. They pretty much his name comes up again and again as being connected to Booth. So they're wanting him too. They think he's a part of the conspiracy. Is he part of the conspiracy? Yes, to a certain extent, but he didn't know when Booth was going to do it. He had an idea that Booth probably wanted to kill Lincoln. But still, it's guilt by association. They're looking for him too. Here's the thing. John Surratt is not in that area. He's not even in the country.
Oh God, where
is
he?
He's in Canada.
Okay.
He hightails because he's supposedly meeting with Canadians. Not Canadian. Confederate Secret Service agents. I think he's heading back to the United States, and he gets he's in the United States, and he gets word that Lincoln is assassinated, and he puts two and two together. It's like, oh shit, let me get the fuck out of here. So he turns around, heads back to Canada, and from Canada he heads to Europe. And from Europe, he ends up in Italy.
Oh.
In the Vatican. We'll get to that later. Let's finish up the official story.
Interesting.
Okay. So, largest manhunt is going on. Everyone's like, they're tearing apart, they're arresting everybody. Whether you're fucking Confederate sympathizer to figure it out, or you're an ex-Confederate that's been wounded, you're trying to go home. They're hunting you. They're hunting Booth. They want to capture Booth. So they end up being in the Garrett farm for like a night. The Garretts are a little they feed him and stuff like that, and he wanted the first night he ends up staying in the house, Booth and Heron, but they act a little funny anytime like horses pass by the farm. So the family thinks that they're going to steal the horses because they have a set of horses, and horses are valuable. Steal the horses and go and leave. So they end up locking them in the barn on the night of April 26th to go sleep. So while Booth and Heron are sleeping, soldiers from the 16th New York Cavalry are in the area. So they end up, before they got to the Garrett farm, they ended up getting a ride from a couple of Confederate soldiers. So these soldiers drop them off around the area of Garrett Farm and say, hey, Garrett will help you if you need a place to stay for the night. So they ended up doing that. The 16th Cavalry, after like talking to a bunch of people, said that, these guys might know these guys, Confederates that just made it into town. So they ended up grabbing these Confederates and pretty much was like, look, we're going to fucking kill you if you don't tell us where fucking Booth is. Mm-hmm. And they were like, they're at Garrett's farm. So they were like, all right, he's at Garrett's farm. Because they pretty much been on Booth and Harold's tail for this whole time. And they thought they were close. And they wasn't. Like, they were actually fucking in Virginia thinking that Booth and Harold was in Virginia when they weren't, when they were still in Maryland trying to cross over the Potomac River. So finally, we found a fucker. So they go to the Garrett farm, they kick in the door. It was like, where's Booth and Harold? It was like, oh, they're in the barn. So they end up surrounding the barn. And they're like, Booth, Harold, come out with your hands up. And Harold's like, all right, fuck it, I'm leaving, I'm coming out. He ends up surrendering quickly. Booth is like the consummate overactor. He wants his dramatic death. He's like, fuck this shit. I'm an actor. I'm not coming out unless it's in a blaze of glory. So the the 16th Cavalry is like, all right, we're just going to burn the barn.
So they set the barn on fire.
They set the barn on fire. It's like, you can come out now. And Booth is like, no, I'm an actor. I'm going to go down with the flames all the time. I'm a racist piece of shit, and I'm not leaving. And God. This way it gets a little bit like fucking just like
it's a little hazy.
You know, a little hazy because some of the soldiers like Booth is like, oh, I'm coming out, and others, and Booth is like, one of the guys is like, no, he's still overacting, like, I have been Caesar. He starts quoting Caesar. So, and all the time he has his crutch in his hand and he has a rifle. Mm-hmm. So one of the cavalry members, a sergeant named Boston Corbett, had crept up behind the barn and saw a crack in it. He literally was looking at Booth, and from Boston Corbett's recollection is that he saw Booth raise his rifle like he was going to shoot it, so Boston shot him in the back of the head. Booth in the back of the head.